for hearing me, council members. I am a native, born and raised Lake Jacksonian. My family has been here since the early 50s in business and whatever, so I want to clarify that I'm not an outsider coming in. I am here to discuss really what started out as a question for me as to why we don't have modern fast charging infrastructure in our city, which I think is widely seen as the economic hub of southern Missouri County. So it started with me getting frustrated with my 16-year-old running down the battery on my car and charging it at home. I charge it on supercharger. Let me back up a second and say, even though I'm from Lake Jackson, I built my career in Seattle. When I bought my car, it made sense then. And then I came down here very quickly on a whim to take care of my elderly parents. And so I've since been here making that work. I love my car. It has helped me and accommodated my neurodivergence in ways that I did not expect it to until I was an EV owner. So I also want to share that there are other things that go into it besides just the cost of gas and all of that. That being said, I called City Hall and I said, hey, I'm just curious, who do I talk to? Because I'm wondering why we don't have this. I know we have some chargers around town, but they're not really accessible for a variety of reasons. Is anybody planning to bring any in? Is there anything like this happening? And I believe I spoke to Ms. Villarreal and she said, normally we just kind of wait for the permit requests to come in. And then I don't remember exactly what I asked after that, but I had questions beyond that. And she said, well, you need to speak to the city council. Would you like to come have a conversation? I said, sure. So then I went and did my own research because that just didn't feel like a satisfactory answer to me. It's mostly because it's a personal issue to me, right? Like, y'all got all this other stuff on your plate, not a thing anybody's thinking about. And I'm the kind of person that didn't want to just come up and be like, hey, I have a problem, can y'all fix it? You know, without me even looking at the data and trying to understand why the decisions have been made up to this point. And they all make sense up to this point, but from what I can see currently, it doesn't make sense to me, just based on the public data. And I've laid that all out in a proposal. I don't know if any of y'all have had time to review it fully. Thank you. I appreciate your diligence on that. I tried to lay it out in a way that I would want to see as an executive strategist if it landed on my desk. And so what I'm asking, if you've had a chance to go through it, is there in the end, nothing costs any money today, but I have laid out ways that this can be funded heavily by existing grants that are already allocated and sitting there waiting to be claimed. And from my understanding, this is not my area of expertise, grant funding and EV infrastructure. I am just an EV owner that has lived this way for 4 years now. My understanding is that if Lake Jackson does not claim them, another Texas city will. But it also goes into ozone compliance and helping with that. And I understand that was done as well with the CNG station. So to me, what I hear there is there's precedent for understanding how this could be a benefit to the region. Additionally, I understand how people can look at this and think there's a political motive or ideology involved, but it's not that. It's genuinely, I see this as nothing but what could be an economic boon to the area, not just in giving the city money that would be going to electric companies that are being charged at home, but if the city were to have an NEVI compliant fast charger, that's also got smart charging technology in it, which then is allowed to be throttled and supports the grid rather than being a drain on the grid. And then ERCOT and other programs offer payment for this as well. When you have an EV owner that is stopped and charging their car, you've got them captured anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes. I promise you, we get out, we wander around, we get a drink, we go eat if we can leave it there. And if there's nothing nearby and it's like in a Walmart parking lot and you don't want to walk into Walmart, I probably get takeout somewhere and sit there in my car and eat it while it charges. The point I'm making here is that it benefits business owners as well and brings additional sales tax to the city as a point of revenue. So from my understanding, it would cost the city very little to be able to implement this in a way that would not just support EV owners, but the community and the region more widely. but if there's something that I'm unaware of, I would love to know, because really, as I said, this all just started as me wanting to know an answer. I gain nothing politically or financially from this in any way, shape, or form. Just wanting to understand and have an easier time. There's so much more I could go into, but yeah.
Ms. Vasquez, I'd just like to first say thank you. Actually bragged on you a little bit to Modesto when we were looking at this, and just said the time and effort that you put into the depth and the details, and then also tied it to references of things that we could look at ourselves, was impressive and appreciated. Almost nobody ever comes to us with a problem this big of a solution, so that's the first thing.
You know, I wanted to make it harder for you to say no than yes, and so if I just put it all out there for y'all to look at, my request is simply to explore this, because that doesn't cost the city anything, and I've tried to lay it out as easily and cleanly as possible with grants and contacts and timelines. Some of them are coming up very soon. I believe October is the first one, and another one, if it's not open now, it's opening soon. So that's the only like push for why right now. But yeah.
Council?
At this time, I don't think it's a good fit for Lake Jackson.
Can you explain why?
Well, we've had a charging station at one time, and I went up by there every day, at least twice, in one car, out of all that time. Black car was a doctor, the only one that ever used it. You know, we don't buy gasoline, buildings for gasoline. They come in, they build their thing and go from there. So, past history, it hadn't been used. Yeah, you said there's 437 cars.
Well, that's a projection that I'm making based off of I did not have the time or the ability to pull zip codes, but yes.
And it wasn't used at all.
With all due
But that's one
respect,
person.
my understanding is that was a different type of charging station, and I'm curious how long ago that was. Was that many years ago, or was this in the very recent past?
That was
Last couple of years.
It shut down last
Couple
year.
of years.
a couple of years ago it shut down, but it was 5 or 6 years when I was there.
I would be curious if it was a level 1 charger, level 2 charger, or whatever, because that technology is very different from the one,
All I know
the
is
fast charging that I'm suggesting here.
Charging apparatus in one car used it, that's about all we know for 6 or 7 years.
Well,
It was-
Okay,
it was
so
wild.
you're here for a discussion.
yeah,
I love that. So, like I said, I read through this 3 times, cause you know, the first time you read it, you
Sure.
just first.
and there's a lot of detail in
There's
there.
a lot of detail. So, the first thing that I would look at, to Mr. Buell's point is, so you've got 470 estimated EVs, that number was
Yes, extrapolated based on the percentages that I could find.
So that's 1.6% of our population. And to his point is the city of Lake Jackson has never, put taxpayer money into building a gas station, and that's the rest of everybody. That has always been left up to, you know, private investors and whatnot. And we have got people here twice now that I'm aware of, private companies have come in. Once when we had the downtown renovations, they were looking at putting in like 4 spots. That was a private company. They looked into everything, said, we won't make any money. And then after that, we had another one that came in and they were looking at the Kohl's parking lot, which if you're gonna do one, probably a great place. They also didn't proceed after they did more of the research. So, kind of going through this, one of the things that struck me that you put on here is the growth of Brazoria County, 1.5%
That's
per
been
month.
month over month for the past 6 months.
And that is true. Brazoria County, of course, as we know, it encompasses a large area.
Sure.
Lake Jackson is not growing at 1.5%. We, from 2020, we had 28,177 people. In 2026, we've had less than 600 additions in those 6 years.
Talking about the EV car growth. Yeah, not population
No,
growth.
earlier in here, 1.3, Lake Jackson represents approximately 7.8% of the population. 1.4, I'm sorry. Talking about the current monthly growth. So, anyways, the point is that, yes, Brazoria County is growing. We see that in the expansion of our court systems and all that kind of stuff, but Lake Jackson itself is not experiencing that same growth. We just don't have anywhere for that growth to happen, we're kind of landlocked in that area.
May I interject for a moment? Because I think perhaps you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to say with that. I'm trying to say with that number that there is a growing adoption of EV usage, and more people would like to have them, but see this issue as not having a place to charge their car reliably. With that being said, I also would not recommend this be a huge gas station type situation. If it were me and I had my idyllic situation of what I think would make sense, I would say look at somewhere like the Civic Center or even City Hall, the library, somewhere where the wiring is already likely there. Put in 1 or 2 chargers, allow it to be something that is a pilot program that potentially gives revenue back to the city. See how it goes. If it doesn't go well,
So I'm gonna
there's
lobby
one
this
thing.
back to you.
Sure,
As somebody
sure.
who has really watched how federal and state grants go. First of all, that's still all taxpayer money.
Absolutely.
Second of all, they're never, ever without strings, and as you read through this, you can see some of the strings. So we could get up to about 90% of it covered, and that still puts us on the hook between $40,000 and $120,000. That's not the big deal. The big deal is every time that we get gifted an asset or try something new like the CNG Center, we are then responsible and obligated to care for that, maintain that, and pay for that in perpetuity. So the cost of it is problematic. The technology will continually change. One thing that I was not clear on reading in here is we talked a lot about battery storage. We actually declined the battery storage part because they want to be near the transformers. Unfortunately, our primary transformers are also close to residential areas, so we declined that. So I could never tell in this if battery storage was part of the normal or
I'll
if
be
it was an
honest,
addition.
I don't know. As I said, that this is not my industry area of expertise. This is just what I could find as a public
No,
citizen,
and you did
right?
great,
So,
and you did great, I'm just saying, those are one of the questions
Absolutely.
that I start thinking about is, so then the city, aka the taxpayers, are then obligated to maintain that standard, and that is on 3.2, it says the city managed station that was built by federal grants carries those standards as a condition of federal funding. So now we're obligated to maintain this forever, or until whatever the grant says. We don't know, are the costs of the batteries covered in here? What are the lifespan span of the batteries? What are the replacement costs of the batteries? What happens to the old batteries when they get, I mean, there's so
all
many
excellent
questions.
questions, all excellent questions.
And I think the biggest kind of put my brakes on with this project was the time push. So yes, one of them was in October that you have to start applying. And the truth of the matter is that we have a list a mile long of wastewater treatment, bad streets, drainage, as Ms. Connie let us know about,
Absolutely.
things that affect every single taxpayer in our city. And we have a very long list, our CIP list, our projects and stuff that are tied to those things that have been vetted for a long time. So one of the things that I think is important is you don't want I personally don't ever want government to move fast, that nothing good is gonna happen from that. So what this would require is for us to shove aside all of these other long-term projects that have been thoroughly vetted and benefit a large number of people.
Can I make sure I understand what
Sure.
you're saying? So, I agree, those are all absolutely important things and should be top priority. And I hear what you're saying about the grants as well. Is it not worth looking into, unless you already have, what those specific grants say? Because if that money, and I hear the taxpayer argument, but I'm just saying, if that money has already been allocated for that specific purpose, and our entire region is ozone non-compliant, and this would move us towards that, does it not make sense to just look at the grant, and the push was mostly just to look at it. As I said, I do not think anybody should move fast on this. It's more, this is coming up, now would be a time to look at it. But the other question I have for you would be, like, you make very valid points. But what would it take for the city to think that this is something that is important? Because there are residents that feel strongly about it, even if they don't have the capacity or desire to speak up about it.
Sure.
I'm just curious what it would take for the city to take something like this seriously rather than thinking this is kind of frivolous.
It's not frivolous, it's not that, we understand how you're tying it to infrastructure. So for myself, and I'm not speaking for the rest of council, they'll
Sure.
speak up on their own. I just thought this was a very interesting proposal. We would have to have a huge outcry from the citizens for us to really start looking at that. And I say that not because this is not important to some of our residents. I say it because I know that we have things that we have to stay focused on. We could drop $200 million tomorrow. We have a hard number on our wastewater treatment plant. Something that everybody flushes the toilet at least once or twice a day, right? So for me, it would require a large number of citizens coming forward and say, hey, we really have, we really need this. And even then I would question it because I'm a big believer in limited government. There are certain things that we are responsible for, and the rest of it needs to be left up to private companies. I know Beaver Applin, and I know he's one of the smartest business people I know.
Yeah.
And he has done a lot of research. He's never put one down here, even when he built his new Buc-ee's. But he has put them in other places because the demand was there.
Well, and again, to the point that I made in the proposal, it doesn't make sense from a commercial standpoint to do it with
But
these
why?
numbers. Well, that's what I'm saying, and as you
Because
said,
of
you
the
made
grants.
points about the grants. This, I'm the first to admit, I do not have extensive experience reviewing federal grants and all the
Yeah.
strings attached.
Sure.
That is not I'm sure,
Yeah.
lots of
But,
lawyers
Tina,
on those,
Can
right?
I ask you a couple questions?
Please do.
How many of these stations do we have here in Lake Jackson at this present time?
I believe there are 7 listed stations. I have this on here. There's 7 listed stations. They are all belonging to,
That's just here in Lake Jackson.
that they are not publicly accessible though. There's no guaranteed public access, and there are not fast charging stations, which means those charging stations, Tesla refers to them as destination chargers, meaning you are going to be there for a minimum of 2 hours to get any form of meaningful charge on your car, as opposed to the fast chargers.
So that's not including Brazos Port area.
The closest one that I'm aware of is in Pearland at a Buc-ee's. And the other one that is in the vicinity, I believe, is in like League City or Hitchcock, somewhere over there. And I was made aware recently that Missouri City was considering putting charging stations in at City Hall.
So none of the hotels or none of the.
There are some hotels that have it. There's one behind the mall. One of those chargers is seemingly perpetually broken, and the point is when they are at hotels, they are meant to be used for the guests there, and they definitely have priority to that. I even went by the one behind HEB, thinking, let me just see if I can fast charge my car, how long it'll take. Let me just pressure test this. And they have a sign on all of them very clearly that says guest use only. So, that's something that should be respected, probably unless, you wanna have an issue with them. So, and then the other ones that I'm aware of are belonging to dealerships or are for private use for Dow employees.
Okay, the reason I was asking because I worked on the west end of the county, and like Sweeney, they just built a new hospital and they put a couple of those charges in there.
That'd be great if we had some at the hospital. That I see them at hospitals a lot. If you have somebody that's coming in to stay overnight or visit for a couple hours, it's that kind of thing. But usually, even those are not necessarily the fast chargers. They are again the level 2 chargers.
The type 2s at Sweeney.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at why, most of the time, the private, companies will do not a fast charger. In the instance where we had one from our provider that, worked with us on the C&G station, they had a charger station on there, but it was too expensive for them to create a whole other system to start billing. So minimal amount, and it was free.
It was free,
There- So most likely that's what the hotels are doing as well. They'll limit it to the customers, but it's too expensive to start creating a billing mechanism.
Yeah, that makes sense as well.
And I liked how you tied in, okay, we're not using it, how to use it for hurricanes and things like that, but this part didn't make sense where it says smart charging reduces grid load and not adds to it. And so we talked about, okay, we can plug people up, they can go shop and do this, but this specifically says TechStop recommends EV charging between 10 PM and 6 AM when renewable and generation peaks and grid capacity is available. They're gonna be shopping at Whataburger, that's it.
Well, this is why it makes sense to have a city-owned one to me, because then the city is in control of being able to throttle when you wanna do that. And the way you incentivize that is to up the charge when, if somebody needs to charge their car to get home or to get to their next destination, they're just gonna do it. They'll be willing to pay more, but you incentivize it by having them charge at the time that you want them to charge for a slightly lesser rate. And it's negligible enough usually that people don't mind it too much, and if they can plan around it, they will. But if they start doing it regularly, it becomes a thing. And if you know that there's gonna be a charging station available, you plan around that as well. So, because right now I can't just go to a gas station and charge my car. I can't just fill up on gas, right? I'm dependent on a trickle charger. So, yeah,
When you say trickle charger, that's the little one, the slower one,
it is me plugging the
into your house.
yes,
Okay.
into the wall, the charger that came with my car into my parents' wall, yeah. And specifically, that is where it's a drain on the grid, because people can be doing it all day long, and,
Instead of faster.
right, and also, you wanna just keep your car plugged in all the time, because it takes so long to charge, and thus it's just always pulling power.
So I'm all in support of electric vehicles. So, and certainly in many places, they're the thing of the future. But it sounds like in Lake Jackson, the problem is there's just not enough people to make it economically viable for Buc-ee's to put in a power station here like they have in Minnesota.
Right, and that's where I said the funding, as I said again, that's the part where I'm requesting, can y'all just look into it, and maybe it's not now that it's moved on, but the groundwork has been done to show why there is a case for this, what the next steps would likely look like, and I think it makes sense. I think that this is the kind of thing that when implemented, you would be surprised at how much usage it's actually getting. Again, why I suggested a small pilot program. But I understand what you're saying. I just request that it's something that at least be considered, if not now, for in the near future, and why I specifically said, what would it take? So, you said there's not a large enough population. You said it would take a large number of citizens speaking out. Do you have a rough percentage or number of what that means? Like 50% or more, less than that,
No, just we would have to hear it repetitively over time, and then it still comes down to the question of, we don't provide gas stations. You and other EV users chose to purchase that vehicle and are therefore just like anybody who chooses to purchase a diesel vehicle, knowing diesels, how much over a gallon, or purchase a gas vehicle. We all assume that our own responsibility for fueling our vehicles and our transportation. Lake Jackson does have access to public transit. And beyond that, what government is responsible for versus what we as individuals are responsible for, are not the same.
I don't disagree with what you're saying about government versus individuals, but I do feel that based on that logic, you're missing the point of what I'm trying to say here, and that it's not just for the EV owners. This is a benefit on a much wider level and what it can bring to Lake Jackson.
Yeah, and I understand that. I do understand that, and I do understand, again, where you talked about during hurricane, when you talked about, using that power, you know, as an income source and things like that. But there's such a non-known number, which is how much is it gonna cost us to run this thing? The city has been gifted different assets from time to time, even if it's a park.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe how much it costs to maintain a park, Robin.
I'm sure it does, when the parks people were here,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and that's something that's, you know, grass and dirt and, you know, swing set.
In that same vein though, we don't ask necessarily how much it makes the city to own this park. We recognize that it's something that serves the citizens. And I do
We'll turn it down
hear,
if we can't afford it though.
I do hear what you're saying, I do hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to encourage a more wider perspective
Yeah.
as to it is beneficial, and as I said, if not now, I do hope that this is something that is looked into even now, just to see what those strings that may be attached, maybe they're not so bad. Or maybe there is a way that it could be done that it's just a small pilot program. But specifically, it does seem to me that it makes sense for it to be a civic-owned option in this case as a pilot type program.
Ms. Vasquez, I will hang on to your documentation. It'll go in a binder. I'll
Thank
hang
you.
on to it. Council, does anybody have any other comments or questions for
No,
Ms.
ma'am.
Vasquez?
Well, thank you for hearing me.
Yes, thank you again for an
Not,
excellent presentation.
not my expertise in this area, but I'm more than happy to continue discussion with anybody that wants my opinion on it.
Well,
Thank you so much.
What I would add is, I think we can still keep talking to private entities, encourage them when the economics are right.
Speak
Or
for
that they predict that it's gonna be profitable.
You know what, I would ask that if any of you hear of anybody or immediately think of anybody locally that would be interested, please pass this to them. I've made it very public. I'm not trying to make money off of this, I just
No.
want the problem solved,
We don't.
right? So
We
if there
don't
is
think that.
somebody, yeah, I know, I'm just stating it again, right? Like if there is somebody that wants to bring this to Lake Jackson, please do pass this proposal to them and they're welcome to contact me for comment if they'd like. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Vasquez.